everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about Meddling with Mistletoe by Liz Johnson. And I'm talking about a Christmas novel because it's now July, and I do a lot of Christmas in July reading precisely because I live in Australia and it's winter and cold weather. So, all those Christmas books that have snow and mistletoe and all those fun things are very attractive for me to read at this time of year. So this one is a contemporary romance, it's Christian fiction, and it's also a standalone novel. So it is connected to characters in some of Liz Johnson's Prince Edward Island, other books in her series. She's got a couple of series that are set on Prince Edward Island. And why did I want to read this one? Well, because it's July, so I read Christmas books in July. I also loved reading The Red Door Inn, and I read that, I think it released around 2016, so I read it quite a while ago. And I don't have a book recommendation for it because I wasn't writing many book recommendations on my blog back in 2016. But as I was reading the story, I remembered the characters and a few things. So that was fun. And so now I want to go and reread that book. But I have a book recommendation on my blog for Beyond the Tides, which is another book that I enjoyed by Liz Johnson. And the link for that will be in the show notes. So let's talk about the book. Meddling with Mistletoe by Liz Johnson is set on the gorgeous Prince Edward Island in Canada, which is a place that I would just love to visit in real life. So this one has quite a number of romance tropes in it. Obviously, it's a Christmas novel, so you've got snow and mistletoe and all the fun things that we associate with Christmas. It also has an inn and effectively a B&B setting, which is also fun. I like to read books that are set in inns. It also has a matchmaking aunt in the story, and it's a foodie book. So we have our leading lady who is doing a lot of baking and making the most delicious homemade pies, which I'll get to in a minute. So let's talk about the first lines. And I'm sharing two lines, and you'll understand why, because the first line's actually quite a famous line, and you'll understand why I've shared the second one for context. So here they are. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. And she was definitely in the wrong Dickens story. So, the person who's talking here, we're in Whitney's point of view, and she's our leading lady. And at the start of the story, she's between jobs and she's saving money to go to culinary school. And it's quite an expensive course that she's doing. And her parents have been at her, particularly her father, because she hasn't, according to him, been sticking at jobs and really hasn't found her groove and what she wants to do in terms of a career. So Whitney's determined that culinary school is what she's going to do, and there's an expensive course she wants to do, and she needs to save money to do that. And the way she's saving money is baking homemade pies, these gorgeous pies that she's selling at a Christmas market on Prince Edward Island. So at the start of the story, disaster strikes because her oven breaks down, and she tries to ring the local repairman who she would normally get to fix things. And he's on a long vacation and won't be back until after Christmas. So that puts her in a bit of a dilemma because she will not have the money to pay for culinary school without doing the baking and selling at the Christmas market. So she ends up talking to her friends Marie and Seth, and they are at the Red Door Inn. And if you've read any of Liz Johnson's books, you'll recognize these names because the Red Door Inn is the book I mentioned earlier. And so we return to the Red Door Inn, which is really fun. Now, Whitney decides that how can she sort of cut a deal to make it attractive for Marie to let her use the kitchen. And the inn doesn't have many guests at this time of year because obviously everyone's very busy in the lead up to Christmas. So Whitney decides that she'll volunteer to babysit Marie's young children. And Marie's like, yeah, that could work. And oh, by the way, if you're going to be in the kitchen in the mornings, can you do breakfast for a few guests that I have staying at the inn? So they strike a deal, and Whitney agrees that she can use the kitchen and the ovens and she'll take over all of that. And in return, she'll cook breakfast for the guests and she'll look after the children when Marie needs help. So that arrangement works quite well for her and it becomes a good solution. And that brings us to our hero in the story, Daniel, who ends up staying at the inn. He's one of the guests there. So he's from Toronto. He's a chief financial officer and is about to start a new job after Christmas. So he's between jobs himself as well. And his aunt by marriage, who was married to his father's brother, her second husband is Seth's uncle. So Seth isn't actually his cousin, but they both kind of relate have been related to the aunt at some point in time. And so he's on his way, this is Daniel, to Prince Edward Island, and he's going to help his aunt negotiate the sale of her antique store because he's a numbers guy, and that's what he enjoys doing. And so he's looking forward to making sure that she gets a fair price for the sale. And so he's staying at the Red Door Inn. So the meet cute when he arrives with Whitney is just embarrassing, and it's really cute, but it's really embarrassing and really awkward, and I'm not going to say anything more because I don't want to ruin it. You can read the story to find out what happens. Now, this book has a number of problems in it, and it's a shorter novel, so it's not as deep in terms of the problems as you would get in a longer novel. And being a Christmas story, Christmas books tend to be more lighthearted, and this one definitely has all those lovely Christmas vibes that I like. But we do have a matchmaking aunt who has the best of intentions, and she would really like to see Daniel settle down and find a lovely wife and have a family, etc., etc. She's effectively adopted Marie and Seth's children as her grandchildren, and she would love to have more nieces and nephews that she could dote on as well. And so she gets Whitney before Whitney actually really has a chance to know who Daniel is. She gets Whitney to agree to help her with this matchmaking scheme. And in return, if they can successfully matchmake Daniel with the lady who is also going to be staying at the inn who's negotiating the sale for the antique store, I'll get to that in a moment. If Whitney can help her do this, then she will help Whitney pay for her culinary course. So that's a big incentive for Whitney because she's really short of money. And even with all the pies that she's planning to sell, she's not quite sure she's going to have enough money to pay for culinary school. And then she's letting her parents down. And so she's quite motivated to make money and to also help Daniel's aunt with her matchmaking schemes. Now, the lady who they're matchmaking, her name's Ruby, and she works for the company that is buying the antique store from the aunt. So Daniel's effectively negotiating on behalf of his aunt, and she's on the other side of the deal negotiating on behalf of the company. And that's part of the way all that pans out is played out in the story as well. So this is all fine and good until Whitney starts having feelings for Daniel. And so you can just imagine there's a lot of conflict that is going to happen in the story as a result of that. So there's in terms of sort of the themes in the story, we look at themes of trust and redemption and forgiveness. And the story, I would say, has relevant faith elements. So with Christmas, you often get some faith content that naturally comes into the story because of the Christmassy things that are happening. And the faith elements are very organic to the story and work really well. So what did I love about this one? I love the homemade pies and the food and all the baking that's happening at the inn. It was very cool to watch. And I also loved how the matchmaking failure panned out. And obviously, the matchmaking has to fail. Otherwise, we don't have a happily ever after to our romance. And so there were lots of hijinks and things related to mistletoe and all sorts of things going on in terms of the matchmaking. I also like the children. So Marie and Seth have three gorgeous kids, and they were just adorable and played quite an interesting role in the story and caused a few embarrassing and awkward situations to happen as well. And it was just lovely seeing Marie in particular. Seth wasn't so much in the story, but Marie was. And seeing how their happily ever after from the Red Door Inn book actually plays out with their young family. And I just loved reading stories on Prince Edward Island. So the setting was just fabulous. So my favorite book quote from the story is this one. She needed the Lord's strength because she was about to set her whole Christmas season on fire. And that's really what's going on in terms of what's happening in her head because she's motivated to try and get this matchmaking thing to work with this lady Ruby and Daniel, but she's got feelings for Daniel, and then Of course, Daniel has his own issues. He's got baggage from the past and a very bad experience he had with a former relationship. And so he's a bit gun shy when it comes to relationships. And he obviously likes Whitney, but Whitney doesn't seem to be reciprocating. And so there's all that fun and awkwardness that goes along with that as well. So they have quite a lot of obstacles they've got to get over to reach their happily ever after. So, in terms of the impact on me, this was just a lovely, feel good, light-hearted Christmas romance. And I just loved it. And there were moments where I was giggling, and particularly with things related to the children. It was just a really sweet story with some lovely laugh out loud moments. So, in summary, I would recommend Meddling with Mistletoe to readers who like heartwarming Christmas romances, and to readers who like the whole white Christmas thing with your mistletoe and playing in the snow and Christmas pageants and all the things that you associate with Christmas, and particularly Christmas in a small town. I love the foodie aspects of the book in terms of the Christmas markets and the baking and all the things that go along with that. You'll like this one if you like adorable children in the story that really do make a difference and create a bit of bedlam and mayhem at different times as well. And if you like stories where the matchmaking is doomed to fail for all the right reasons, then you'll like this one. If you like the nerdy style hero, so Daniel is a bit on the nerdy side. He's very much a numbers guy, and he was just a really sweet, a really lovely hero. And he wasn't arrogant, he wasn't a take charge person, but he was just delightful and a really good match for Whitney as well, even though his aunt thought that he would be a better match with Ruby. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. And you'll like this one if you like the Prince Edward Island setting and the inn, the Red Door Inn, which is just lovely. And I loved how there were relevant faith elements in the story. Thanks for joining me today. Does Meddling with Mistletoe sound like a book that you'd like to read? Have you read it? Or do you read Christmas books in July, or do you read them all year round, or just prefer to read them in the Christmas season? You can let me know. If you're listening on the podcast, you can send me a text via a link in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, you can like the episode and leave a comment at YouTube. You can also email me via my website if you go to the contact form there at narelleatkins.com. Please subscribe at your favorite podcasting app or subscribe at YouTube if you've enjoyed listening to this episode. And also, please share the episode link with a friend who you think would enjoy reading Liz Johnson's books or loves reading heartwarming and wonderful Christmas romance novels. All the links that I've mentioned are in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in and see you next time.